from a fire hose. But I'll talk a little bit about myself, just give you a little bit of background. I actually attended here at Purdue Fort Wayne back in 1989. So I'm an old fogey. I actually worked on artificial neural networks. We published a paper on using neural networks to classify EKG arrhythmia in an era where you could only address like 1 megabyte of RAM at a time. So most of the time I spent swapping things from disk to RAM and then back to disk to train a neural network back in those days. So it's funny to see how AI has come as far as it's come. But that's one of the things I did. By the way, how many people know what a Mandelbrot set is? Only 2 hands? Oh no. I have to do this. So one of the things that got me interested in computers was actually studying the Mandelbrot set. You should all Google it later. It's freaking amazing. This whole equation, this is actually what's called a Mandelbrot zoom. It's a complex plane. You have the imaginary plane going up and then the regular number line going across. But essentially it's just iterating a z equals z squared plus c. And it's using the number of times it iterates to change a color, and it infinitely zooms, and you can see the same pattern. You can see it, there it is again, the Mandelbrot set. So it's self-similar, it's a fractal, but it's an awesome fractal, and you can find, pi in it and E in it, and you can find biological things that look like seashells and things of that nature in it. So just from iterating that simple equation over and over, you can get this infinite zoom of variability and beauty, and so it's fascinating. But it was discovered by Benoit Mandelbrot, and he the very first one he printed out on paper, and it was just little stars. It's done in on an IBM computer, and so to actually understand that you could zoom in and see all that, like it took lots of computation to be able to do it. Back when I first started doing this, just to render one of those frames that I showed, it would take 2 or 3 days just to render one frame. And then if you zoom into the next frame, it took an entire 3 days to do the next frame. And it took 3 days just to calculate all those pixels. But now you can actually go out to the internet and watch them. Everybody here should know what Mandelbrots are. Definitely check into it. There's really good things at Veritasium about this, or videos online. But okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about MIE real quick. We have a research and development facility downtown. Actually, I'm just going to play a quick video because it'll do it faster than I will.
Welcome to the heart of Northeast Indiana, where innovation meets opportunity. Are you a software developer? Well, we are looking for passionate people to make an impact in healthcare. Here at MIE, we foster a community of learning and growth. With developers boasting over 20 years of experience, they aren't just coding pros, they are also great mentors. Join us and gain insights, refine your skills, and contribute to groundbreaking software solutions in healthcare. At our office at Electric Works in Northeast Indiana, we are committed to creating a culture where our employees feel supported and appreciated. Unwind and recharge in our lounge spaces, or the game room with shuffleboard and ping pong. Try pushing your limits in our CrossFit-style gym, or explore new heights in our racing and flight simulators, where fun meets innovation. We support remote work too, even if you're local or states away. So join our team, where passion, innovation, and opportunity converge. MIE, working to make a meaningful difference in healthcare.
Downtown there, I actually committed to doing all that before COVID happened and everybody decided to work from home. But it is a lot of fun for people to come out there. There's one of the things too, I thought I'd show this. We also have a lab. A bio lab. I'm actually going to come back in a couple of months and talk about bioinformatics and programming, with DNA. But we actually have a lab where we're doing things like tracking cell fate, and we have like a $500,000 microscope and all these other fun toys to be able to interrogate the coding that is life, like essentially how life is programmed. So that's another fun thing out there to do. But one of the things everybody, I think a lot of people are interested in working from home. Here, I'm going to play this video here.
I love it. So it's my golden cage, like I said. So, and my office, like my desk right now, is kind of like, it's actually in my dining room.
We did remote work before COVID made it cool. I could do it from Cyprus. I actually did it from Cyprus one time, and people loved it because they couldn't bother me, and I got so much stuff done. It was awesome.
So it is nice that you kind of have the ability to work your own hours outside of like making sure you're not missing meetings. Like where I'm at in Denver, I've got a 30-minute drive at least to get to like any of the type of hikes that I want to do. So being able to end the day early, if you start early, leaving at like 2:30 or 3, gives you plenty of time to drive into the mountains, get a hike done, and be back in time by dinner.
I like going to the office, and I still do now. I go there twice a week just to get out of my house.
The office space is huge. So it was so impressive, right? The fact that you can ride your bike around there it's hysterical to me. Like, that is so funny that he can do that.
It's nice to have a balance to be able to choose. You know, if you wake up and you're feeling social, go in the office. If you wake up late and you're tired, then just go to your computer chair and start working.
So obviously, if you're doing, we have the nice research and development facility, but we don't ask people to come in. I think people can be more productive from home if they have the discipline to actually work from home. It is a discipline you have to learn to be able to do. And it also can be a little depressing too, if you're just the golden cage, as she described it. But we have developers all over the country. I just talk, so that it's a fun place to work. It's out, what do we do? And I thought I would just show a quick demonstration of what we do. And medical informatics engineering is our name. It's been, one of the things I got interested in doing the research that I did on neural networks and detecting EKG arrhythmia is it exposed me to healthcare and how bad healthcare was in terms of managing information. And that's one of the things I set out on a desk. I set out trying to change that. And electronic medical records, actually, when I was doing it, most information was sitting in a filing cabinet. So that literally they were paper charts. And over the last decade, we've done a really good job of getting things, into the computer. And when I say we, I mean the United States mostly has done a good job, because in 2009, the government put $22 billion in incentives for physicians and hospitals to buy electronic medical records. And we have an electronic medical record ourselves. And frankly, we were sucked into this thing where we make the computer, the doctors are now working for the computer instead of the computer working for the doctor. I think that's a major problem with the way by the way, one of the lessons that you got to learn about computer science is anytime you change something with computers, you're usually shifting some effort from one person to another. And the interesting thing is, like, anytime you make a change, like, especially in a complex process, there were a lot of people who manage medical records and staff that would manage medical records. And what we've done is shift that responsibility from the medical records people, who are fairly low paid, and more of them, to a physician who's highly paid. And now they're managing medical records. And this is a silly thing. I had a doctor once who said, I think if I can just schedule an appointment with a patient, like, I want that on my screen. And I said, I think that's a bad idea. I don't think you want to sit there scheduling a patient. No, I'm talking to the patient. I'll schedule it. And then literally, he called me 2 hours after he asked for it to be added to his screen. And he's like, yeah, every time the patient's got to check their phone, and then they got to, like, oh no, that's not going to work for me. I got to do this other thing. And they spend 10 minutes talking to the patient with a back and forth, like, no. You go talk to the receptionist. I'm going to go on to the next patient, right? So there are those kinds of challenges when you think through, like, a lot of times in computer science, we're like, oh, let's go to the source. Let's just get information from the doctor instead of having it go through a process. Well, sometimes you have to say, look, this person's time is worth more than this other person. So you keep those divisions of responsibility separate. But we've not done that over the last 10 years. Actually, this is a fun little video I want to play that kind of highlights.
All right, everyone, today's the day. The hospital is switching over to Epic. Now, your job as super users is to help all of the physicians, even the surgeons, especially the surgeons. Now, this will be stressful. Just remember, they can't physically assault you. Wait, what? Yes. None of the doctors are allowed to vent their frustration by punching, kicking, or tackling you. They have been reminded of this. They had to be reminded? Okay, everyone, let's get out there and teach some Epic. Hi, doctor. Can I help you with it? This is the hardest thing I've had to do in my entire life, tech bro. Okay, well, let me help. Let's see what you're trying to Well, let's start with your username and password. This is the first thing. Let's go to your visit navigator. Now that's your discharge navigator. No, not the call navigator. You know, let me get you a navigator glossary. You're going to need to read up on this. Yeah, that's your Epic in basket. That's where you'll find more work when you're done with your work. Smart text or smart phrase can be.
By the way, he's an ophthalmologist. And so that's him kind of highlighting the suffering that he's having to deal with. Here, this is actually an emergency room physician who actually probably shouldn't be an emergency room physician. He's so good. His name's Z-Dog MD, and all of his content is really good. He's got a whole YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm out that paper. No more chasing med records. Writing so illegible that I'll be HIPAA forever. Bought the new software, and though we use it here, I can't use it over there. Different systems everywhere. I used to chart on paper. All of my verbals recorded, mixed up with the ward clerk. Turned diluted to dilaudid, switched me to that EMR. Meaningless abuse, G. Now catch me at the nurse's station, matching that F2 key. Notes used to be our story, narrative. But yo, replaced with copy paste, now a bloated ransom note. Me, I'm at that bedside, focused like a laser beam on the patient. Now come on, I'm treating the computer screen. 8 dozen warnings, click check boxes, alarm fatigue, Vaseline conflicts with Doxy. Nurses, they be burned out, we could use some OT. Tell by our wrist guards that we most definitely are.
They built you a turd, doc. That's the takeaway there. So there's a lesson in all of this, right? That information systems don't necessarily make our lives better. There's a lot of good things that have happened as a result of this, but there is a lot of bad things that have happened as well. And there's lots of papers here about why doctors hate their computers, death by 1,000 clicks. You know, EMR contributes to actually suicides. Believe it or not, the suicide rate of physicians have climbed as a result of electronic medical records, also COVID and other kinds of things. But literally physicians, there's something called physician burnout. Actually, I'm going to play just one little
What's
clip
up,
of this.
everybody? It's Dr. Z. Okay, listen, I'm really, really, really tired of people calling it burnout. What over 50% of healthcare professionals are experiencing, they call it burnout. It's exhaustion, low productivity, and a feeling of deep cynicism. And it's so prevalent that everyone, even in administration, is starting to panic. Like, what's going on? Why are physicians and nurses and PAs, why are they burning out? Well, burnout is a kind of victim shaming. It's saying you're not resourceful enough, you're not resilient enough, you're not strong enough to adapt to a system. So maybe you should meditate. Maybe you should use some lavender essential oil. Maybe we could have a wellness retreat or hire a chief wellness officer. Listen, it's all bull. Here's what's really going on. We're not suffering from burnout. We're suffering from something that Wendy Dean and Simon Talbot call moral injury. Let that sink in for a second. People go to war. They have a set of moral values. They care about other human beings. And then they're forced to either become a part of or bear witness to things that are so against everything they believe that when they come back, they fall apart. We call it PTSD. We have a million different names for it. What it is moral injury. Humans are moral, idealistic creatures that resonate love for other humans. And what happens when our moral ideals meet the real world, where we cannot give our patients the care we know that we could give if we had the tools and the resources and the autonomy to do it? What happens when we're trained in our schooling to give the best possible care to patients regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their race, regardless of their condition or their gender, but then we meet the real world where it's all about the insurance company's bottom line. It's all about the hospital system's revenue. It's all about throughput and RVUs. And then we meet an electronic health record that is a glorified cash register with a little patient stuff tacked on. And we stare at that instead of staring at the vulnerable person who's having the worst day of their lives, and you can't be with them. How would that make anybody feel, let alone some of the most resourceful, resilient, passionate human beings on the planet are healthcare professionals? These are people who went into this field with an almost evangelical religious zeal to help others. Why do I say that? Because they sacrificed their 20s, they sacrificed financial stability early on, they sacrificed family, they sacrificed sleep, they sacrificed their own health because they felt they were going to be part of something much larger than them. That is the highest aspiration of any human being, and they had a moral code to go with that. Then they meet our healthcare system, and all it is the opposite of what their morality tells them they need to do for patients. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen to a good person in a bad system when they feel they can't change the system, but they have to adapt? They're going to adapt, they're going to adapt, they're going to adapt, and then they're going to break. And that's what they call burnout. It's not burnout. The next administrator who tells you they're trying to manage burnout, tell them to go themselves. Tell them it's moral injury. And until we know what it is, we're never going to be able to treat it. How are you going to treat moral injury? You change the system that is causing the moral injury. You change the...
So you can see these things, these systems have real consequences, right? These are the people we're served. My mission is to serve physicians who are out doing the Lord's work. They're on the front lines with patients who are struggling, and so our job is to make their lives better. So, one of the things that I believe in is that the only way, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and so our job is to make medical records feel magical. And by the way, a lot of the things that were described in those videos, I've committed those sins. we've actually made a smart assessment tool that's not smart. We've made point and click in our system, partly because the government mandated that stuff had to be entered into the system, but it didn't mandate it had to be entered by the physician. It just had to be in the computer, right? So actually we trademarked the term minimally invasive EMR. And so we said, no, the nursing will do it and the doctor will approve it. And a lot of the doctors love our system because we actually believe in what we call minimally invasive electronic health records or medical records. So, but in 2019, because of the AI background, we do a lot of AI. I'm going to play this demo just real quick to show what it looks like.
Welcome to Blue Hive AI, the intelligent way to capture, transcribe, and act on clinical encounters. Let's get started. To begin, tap the start button to initiate an audio recording. If you prefer to type, simply open a new session and start typing. When you choose to record, Blue Hive AI will ask for permission to use your microphone. Once granted, the recording begins, and you'll notice a purple border around the screen, indicating that everything is being captured. As you speak, you'll also see an audio progress bar showing peaks as your voice is picked up. Additionally, a timer will now display the duration of the ongoing audio recording, and if you need that extra layer of confidence, the microphone icon will visually respond to the sound of your voice. During the exam, whether you hold your phone or place it aside, Blue Hive AI will transcribe your conversation in real time. Furthermore, if you pause for more than 5 seconds in your audio recording, an alert will display to confirm if you're still there, ensuring no part of your voice is missed and all audio is accurately being captured. From that transcription, it can generate actionable items for you, like creating orders, referring a physician, scheduling a follow-up appointment, or creating a summary for today's visit. In this example, you can see Blue Hive AI accurately documents the summary of the visit. Need to add images to your documentation? No problem. You can upload images directly to the chat, and Blue Hive AI will read those images and add them to the SOAP note. Here, you can see the results of an audiogram being uploaded and Blue Hive AI accurately reading those results and adding them to the visit. Wow, now that's impressive. Bluehive AI also integrates directly with your EHR. In this example, Bluehive is integrating with WebChart. This one-time setup will prompt you to log into your EHR. After accepting the terms and conditions, you'll be rerouted back to the Bluehive app. When you start a new session, you have two options. You can either select a patient from the drop-down menu, which shows patients with appointments or recently viewed patients, or mention their name during the recording. Bluehive AI will automatically assign the session to the correct patient. You can even ask Bluehive AI specific questions about the patient record, like their current medication, and Bluehive will answer accordingly. And to blow your mind one last time, integrating with your EHR will automatically format the response into documents where you can then add them to your patient's chart with a simple click of a button. Ready to give it a try? Bluehive AI is available now on the App Store and Google Play Store.
So we're actually transforming a system where the physician feels like they're working for the computer and the computer is now working for them. And that is a huge sea change. This is probably one of the best testimonies. We just got this a couple days ago, so I thought I would include.
I'm Dr. Jeff Margolis. I'm a practicing medical oncologist in Royal Oak, Michigan. And I'm also the president of Michigan Health Professionals, which is the largest private practice in the state of Michigan. There's almost 500 doctors that are part of the practice. We slowed down our workflow and became less productive because of EMR. And Bluehive was the first time that felt like we got it right. It was absolutely liberating. I could now throw away the pen, the paper, the monitor. I could just look at the patient, talk, and be a doctor, and then not worry about what the documentation was. Bluehive did that part, for me. I mean, just to show you how crazy good it is, I wondered what would happen if I said, write the note in the form of a rap, and it did. And then I said, can you do it as a Dr. Seuss? And it wrote the note. And the truth is, if I sent it to an insurance company, they would actually have to accept it as a billable thing because it included all the billable pieces, except it all rhymed and all had the right things. So most of us in the practice that have switched over to Bluehive, we've gotten an hour, 2 hours back of our day having to do this. It has just been remarkable of how much it's improved our patient care and allowed us to go back to being doctors. So I would say it was liberating. I mean, just really liberating.
That warms my heart. Like that's a whole sea change right there. So AI is going to have an amazing impact on productivity and especially in healthcare. So that's what we do at MIE. So the next half of my talk here is going to be talking about software development, right? What do you, as software developers, everybody's here, I think there are some master's degrees and undergrads, right? See some of my interns over there in the corner there. What I'd like to do is talk about probably many people were interested in getting a software development, probably either because they loved it or because they that's the best paying things out there today, right? I'm curious how many people are like, oh, I went into software development because I think that's where the money's at. All right, there we go. one brave hand out there. That's it. That's the only person who doesn't go after that sweet cash. One of the things I would say is, who knows what AI will do to this actually in terms of being able to write code and everything else, right? This is a, certainly, we are in a moment where computer science and technology is highly valued skill. So I'm so glad that you guys are all doing it. And there's so much that still needs to be done. But I will say this, find your passion, do what you love. That's the more important thing, right? I don't chase the almighty dollar, although dollars actually bring you the power to do the things you love. So that's an important thing. That's an element that has to be optimized for, but it's not the end all be all. Life is short. You guys are all fairly young. And I can tell you it goes by in a blink. It really does. But the one thing I'd say that the best thing to do is find what you love and put it into service of others. I really love technology And I found healthcare and the pain and suffering that was there, and I wanted to serve the physicians. And so because I've put my passion into something and serving healthcare, I haven't worked a day in my life. I love it so much. I work, it's funny because I have a little graph down here that says, you're gonna spend 8 hours a day working, some hours traveling, and some hours sleeping. So 2/3 of your life are wasted if work is not your passion. Like literally, you'll have family and love is only 1/3 of your life, and you'll have wasted 1/3 of your life if work isn't part of your passion. So if you can make work purposeful and meaningful to you, and that can be any kind of work, right? Like physicians want to serve patients, and they're fulfilled by, laying hands on patients. I'm a nerd. I don't want to touch patients. They're icky. I'd rather talk to the doctors and then have them do that. But I really want to see healthcare be changed. I don't want patients to suffer either. But I can't be out there. I don't want to deal with patients. I'd rather deal with the tech. So that's my first recommendation, is find what you love. Now, one of the big problems is because you're all inexperienced, you don't know what you love. It's very difficult to say, I know what my passions are if you don't know what you don't like, so it's like, try lots of things. That's one of the things I always tell people who work for me is my job is to find a role in the organization where you're going to launch yourself out of bed every day and love to do the work you're going to do. My big problem is with new people that come in, they don't even know what that is. And so that's a challenge. That's your big challenge. Hopefully underclassmen is like, your job is to kiss as many frogs to see what turns into a prince. You got to kiss as many frogs as possible. If you know the analogy, you got to kiss as many frogs to figure out which frog is that one that's actually going to be the prince for you. And you got to fail a lot. That means 99 times you got to fail in order to succeed once. So, by the way, that was ChatGPT's idea of what programming is like. I asked ChatGPT to generate an image of, beating your head against the wall 99 times just to get something work. And you'll see there's a little piece of dopamine down here. So I'm sure many of you know what that's like, right? Like you have to be, in computer science, you have to be happy with, 3 or 4 days of not success. And then that one moment where it finally works somehow makes up for the 3 or 4 days of pain and suffering. And you're like, yes, I got it to work. Why do we punish ourselves so damn hard? But we're just wired that way. One of the other things I would like to talk about is something called the 5 whys. Anybody know what the 5 whys are? Oh, one. Oh, yeah, it doesn't count if you're at MIE. So one person. So I think this is something that serves you in life, but it's particularly important in development, is the 5 whys. I just want to play this here.
One of the really difficult questions that entrepreneurs face is deciding how much time and energy to invest in process and infrastructure versus building product and learning. We use a technique from the Toyota production system called 5 whys. The idea is when we run into a problem, when we have a server crash or a product that doesn't work, we want to get to the root cause of what caused it to fail and then fix that root cause. Behind every seemingly technical problem is actually a human problem waiting to be found. Let me give you an example. At my last company, if a server crashed, we would ask a question like, why did the server crash? It would be because a new API was pushed to that server. But why was that? It's because we just launched a new feature that used that API in the wrong way. Well, why is that? It's because we had an engineer who was new and didn't know how to use that API properly. Well, why is that? It's because that engineer was never trained. Well, why is that? It's because their manager didn't believe in training. So what seemed like a technical problem of a server crashing is revealed to be a managerial problem with that engineer's manager. The technique of 5 whys is to make a proportional investment in each of the 5 levels of the hierarchy. So fix the server, and improve that API, and teach that engineer the proper way to use it, and also have a conversation with the engineer's manager. Now, when I was the manager at the receiving end of this kind of conversation, I would usually say something like this. Well, sure, I believe in training. I think it's very important. And if you can find somebody who can do all the work I was planning to do for the next 8 weeks, I would be happy to invest in a state-of-the-art training program for my company, which in a startup is basically manager speak for, there is no way I'm going to do this training program, leave me alone. So how can we get out of that situation where it's all or nothing? 8 weeks invested in managerial training or leave the problem as is. 5 whys gives us a way out, which is let's make a small proportional investment each time the problem happens. Let's do the first hour of that 8-week training program. Then if we have additional problems that are caused by training failures, we'll do the 2nd hour and the 3rd hour and the 4th hour. In that way, 5 whys acts as an automatic speed regulator, When we're going too fast, when we're acting sloppy, when we're making mistakes, it forces us to automatically invest proportionally in prevention. As those prevention investments pay off, the team can naturally speed up again, and we can find our optimal pace of work. So that's how it works. Every time you have an unexpected surprise, a fire you have to fight, ask why at least 5 times. Find the human problem behind every seemingly technical fault, and make a proportional investment in each of the 5 layers. This is a really powerful technique for building an adaptive culture that automatically invests in process only when it's needed.
It's so good because it's about preventing the problem from happening, right? You're making a small investment. And by the way, there's another philosophy, which is if you didn't end in management, if the fingers aren't pointing back at you, if you don't actually ask, if by 5 whys you haven't gotten to you, you have to ask the 6th or 7th why, right? So in my organization, it's like 5 why. The only thing I would say on top of him is like, oh, I have to have the conversation with the manager. Well, he should have asked the 6th why, which is why haven't you had that conversation with that manager, right? So if it doesn't fall on you, then you haven't asked enough whys. And by the way, in our organization, like when you do root cause analysis and everything, there's no judgment. I've never fired anybody for making a mistake. I fired people for making the same mistake over and over. But mistakes, in fact, I had somebody who deleted a server and blew out all of the patient data on a database, and we had to restore the data from a backup and then run a transaction log to restore it. It took 3 days, and the poor client was down, for 3 days while they did that. And he came to me and he resigned. And I said, hell no, I don't accept your resignation. I just invested 3 days times 40 engineers in you. You're never going to make that mistake again. I'm not letting somebody else benefit from that investment. I know you're not going to F that up again. You gotta pay me back. You're not quitting. You're going to earn that money back. So, and he never did, by the way. Like he's, in fact, he actually told everybody else about the problem, and he's always warned everybody else. And he's like, so mistakes are just part of the process. There's another one in here. By the way, we'll share this presentation with everybody. I'm not going to play all the videos. I have way too many to do, but I'll share the presentation. There's a nice one here about the parable of the oranges, and it's also about how do you stand out? How do you actually how do you escalate yourself in the organization? I'm assuming nobody's probably heard the parable of the oranges. Have you heard the parable of the oranges? Aha, the one guy who did that. The parable of the oranges is a great way to understand your value in the organization and it's related to 5 whys. But it's a great story. Okay, so another thing I want people to be familiar with is building institutional knowledge. Right now, all of you are, spending your time trying to put information in your brain. When you go work for an employer, they don't want information in your brain. They want institutional knowledge. They want the knowledge that you acquire to be disseminated to the rest of the staff. And sometimes that staff is like, this is what works. But often, and people don't think about it, you have to write down what doesn't work so that the poor next man up doesn't do what you did wrong. So writing down what you do and trying to disseminate what you do is a skill that's not learned very much in school, but it should be. And actually, I think in the era of AI and what we're doing, I think we need to change education so that it is more of a diary of a personal journey. I think college should be, here's my diary of my personal journey, because it's not about just cramming memories or facts into your head. It's really about expressing how did you learn, I think, and actually showing an employer, here's my diary. This actually is how we run our internship projects. By the way, there's a thing called the Cult of Done Manifesto. I love this. I'm not going to go into deep detail on it, but I use this in my life. There's 3 states of being: knowing, action, and completion. There is no editing stage. You don't actually say, like, I'm working on a draft. Like, you literally are either not knowing about something and you like to know about it. You are in action, doing something about it, or you're done with it. Like, it's called the Cult of Done Manifesto because you're really trying to be done with something, which basically is a way to trick your brain into generating some dopamine to actually complete something or see some value in, writing something down. And when you write something down for someone else to use, you can call it done. Okay, that's the philosophy of the Cult of Done. Pretending what you know is almost the same as knowing what you're doing. So just accept that you know what you're doing, even if you don't do it, right? Banish procrastination. The point of being done is not to finish, but to get other things done. Once you're done, you can throw it all away. That's really important because done, like sometimes you write a bunch of code and you're like, oh my gosh, it's done. I want to preserve that. I actually pay my developers more for deleting code than actually writing code. We have 1.4 million lines of C code. So If you write more code, I have to maintain it. I'd rather, put 3 lines and replace 100 lines with 3 lines with a well-oiled library, right? So, yeah, there, right here is destruction is a variant of done. One of my favorites here is laugh at perfection. It's boring. It keeps you from, being done. In other words, don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. If you get a good enough solution, get it out there, ship it, and don't let perfection not get that out there, because what you think is perfect is probably not. We'll get into some of that later. Let me show you an example of what we do here. So this is an internship document. Like when you go out to an employer, they're going to have ways of reporting up to management so everybody knows what's being done. You don't do this at school today, but essentially I can go to any day here and see a summary of that week of what's been happening. And I'll pick on, is Max out there? No, Max didn't show up today. Max is, I'm going to pick on Max. He was an intern this summer for us, and I'll pick on him. So what we demand of our developers is that, they, actually all my employees have to check in their stand-up processes, but, so I can go to any given day and see what he worked on. And I have this rule, like if you look at a video or you go to a website, whether it was good or it was bad, tell me what, don't close a window in your browser without pasting it into your tempo document. In fact, I tell people to wear the Command C and the Command V of their keyboard off. Like, don't close a tab unless you've written it down. If it's a good place to go, write it down. If it's a bad place to go, so you can see, his summer, these are all the things he worked on. I can go to any day. And these are also searchable. If I search in his document, I can find things that are interesting in there. By the way, Max has also done great. I also believe that when you're doing things, you should, as a developer, this actually applies to all employees. But as a developer, what's nice is also to live your life in GitHub. So Max out here, you can see all the contributions he made over the summer. So like on our summer internship, we tell everybody to do the stuff as open source. So that actually builds a resume for your, that you could show other employers what you did. Okay, so that's part of building institutional knowledge. By the way, I also love considering shorts. That's the newer thing. Like this is something we're doing over the last year, is telling people, guess what? Use the shorts. How many people do Instagram shorts or YouTube videos? Does anybody upload anything? Oh, one person. All right. Yeah, I think computer scientists are generally a hermit crab kind of group. There are people who like to post every day, right? I would encourage you to do that, especially, what you're doing, like consider doing shorts. This is actually one of Mac's shorts, 3-minute video.
Another demonstration video. This time we are going to go over the download document feature, or the save document feature, I should say, in the WebChart Go app. So what this allows you to do is anytime you view a document, so it really just depends, but to do this.
So he's demoing it, right? So if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000. So like if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000 because you can see it in interaction. So this is a new area for us, in terms of pushing it. Like I'm actually talking to my developers, like, do a short, there's a little record, do it on your phone. Actually, it's funny, he would not do it on his phone. There's a couple of guys that would do it on their phone. Like just hold up your phone, record, and upload. Like get good at telling the story of what you did and also what you failed at. Like don't be embarrassed by failure. Like show people what you learn. And that's actually important to an employer too. I actually don't like it when someone gets stuck and they pound away and they pound away and they pound away and they don't communicate. Like if you communicate that this is a problem that you have and you're stuck, I can go, oh, I've had that problem. I can help you with it. So communication is key. All right. So, by the way, just to make sure on a time check, what's the, I got 15 minutes and then Q&A maybe? Okay. Just making sure. By the way, I'll go for 3 hours if you guys let me. So please, because I have more slides than we have time for. But the first thing I'd say is breadth first, then depth. Does anybody know the 2 hardest problems in computer science that hasn't heard me tell the joke? Oh, nobody knows the 2 hardest problems in computer science? Okay, the 2 hardest problems in computer science is cache invalidation and naming things. And off by 1 errors. So those are the two hardest problems in computer science, naming things, right? Like actually naming something is probably the hardest. I always, cache invalidation is like a classically difficult problem. You always pick, that joke is always works, so you take some classically difficult problem, but then you add naming things. Like naming things is the hardest thing in computer science, and because you're trying to convey meaning to the next person, right? But we do a lot of that in computer science. So unfortunately, there's a million things to learn. Like this is the continuous integration CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Yeah. That didn't roll off the tongue. But that every single tool that's on here, if you don't know what it is, go and read the Wikipedia page at least about it. Like I should be able to quiz every one person on like what everything on that diagram. And there's like, and by the way, you can go out, if you look at CI/CD pipelines, you'll see a million of these exist out there with different apps. Like just go out and just know something basic about every single thing on there, at least to know, like, for example, Puppet and Chef and Ansible are all in configuration management, right? Like just know something about a little bit of things about a lot of different things. And then you'll find there might be something you want to dive in on and then learn more about that. And one of the things I'd say, tech is lifelong learning. Like everything you learn on here, like in 3 years, it's going to be a different slide deck. It's going to be like whatever the new sexy is that every 3 years, somebody wants to change out the whole infrastructure because it's like, oh, that's yesterday. Now it's today. This is the new technology today, right? So that's another problem with computer science is we're just constantly having to learn all the time new infrastructure stacks. It's also one of the problems with, I think, universities that move slow and have a difficult time keeping up with the digital trends. If you go take an anatomy class, we don't grow new parts. But if you do computer science, the technology, Java is probably what most of you learn, but Java's got to die in. Java's like it's not dying, but it's like, it's not as popular as like say JavaScript or Python right now. So, and by the way, try lots of things. We'll talk about this later, but this is a guy, for example, who videoed.
Exactly 3:45 p.m. on September 9th, 1947, Grace Hopper discovered the first official computer bug, a real-life moth that found its way onto the number 70 relay of the Harvard Mark II Aiken relay calculator. Today, computer programmers create their own bugs, but that wouldn't be possible without the help of a modern code editor. I wanted to find out which code editor is best in the 2020s, so I tried to write a basic program with 10 different text editors and IDEs. We'll look at everything from basic command line editors to the most advanced cloud-based integrated development environments. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each option and look at how these tools have evolved over the last 50 years.
Think about this.
Things like undo, find and replace, cut, copy, and paste are all commonplace, but back in the 1960s, they were revolutionary.
So anyway, by the way, remember I told you live your life out loud, learning experience, everything else, like document what you do. Here's this guy, Fireship. How many people know Fireship.io? Oh, good. Thank God. All right. Most of you do. I love his stuff. But here's a guy who lives his life out loud and he makes, he does very well. Probably makes more than $1 million a year off of these videos that he does, but just because he's blogging about what he does, enough people follow him. The next thing, as I say, is ask for help. Like, don't do it yourself, ask for help. Find people, mentors that you can do and bug them. I wanted to play this little video. I think it's really good.
I always call him up. I called up, this will date me, but I called up Bill Hewlett when I was 12 years old, and he lived in Palo Alto. His number was still in the phone book, and he answered the phone himself. He said, yes? I said, hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I'm 12 years old. I'm a student in high school, and I want to build a frequency counter, and I was wondering if you had any spare parts I could have. And he laughed, and he gave me the spare parts to build this frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer in Hewlett-Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on frequency counters. He got me a job in the place that built them. And I was in heaven. And I've never found anyone who said no or hung up the phone when I called. I just asked. And when people ask me, I try to be as responsive and to pay that debt of gratitude back. Most people never pick up the phone and call. Most people never ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. You gotta act. And you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to crash and burn. With people on the phone, with I've never found anybody that didn't want to help me if I asked them for help. I always
So,
call him up. I
notice
called
the
up,
fail thing comes up there. but
this'll date
act
me, but I
also
called up
came
Bill
there,
Hewlett when
but
I was
then also like act. By the way, asking the right question is a trick. Does anybody know Perplexity? Oh, good. Some people do. All right, good. Rag. So this is the founder of Perplexity.
The biggest blocker to us is the biggest enemy to us is not Google. It is the fact that people are not naturally good at asking questions. Like, why is everyone not able to do podcasts like you? There is a skill to asking good questions, and everyone's curious though. Curiosity is unbounded in this world. Every person in the world is curious, but not all of them are blessed to translate that curiosity into a well articulated question. There's a lot of human thought that goes into refining your curiosity into a question. And then there's a lot of skill into like making sure the question is well prompted enough for these AIs.
Well, I would say the sequence of questions is, as you've highlighted, really important.
Right. So help people ask the question
The first one.
and suggest them interesting questions to.
Yeah. So that's the good news is AI can help you articulate the question. I've had a couple interns that told me once I didn't even think to ask I share my conversations with ChatGPT with interns, and I had an intern once who said, it was very interesting the questions you were asking. It wouldn't have even occurred to me to ask those questions, right? So, the good news is we have AI, and you can ask it to even ask questions, right? Like a lot of times I'm like, hey, I want a script to do this thing. If you say, ask me 10 questions before you write the script, what you might need to know in order to get the best outcome, it'll ask you 10 questions that you should then try to answer. So some of this is just getting the skill of asking the question. And by the way, asking the question to the AI is an important skill to learn. That's an incredible skill to be able to articulate a question. And by the way, a lot of times you fumble with the question, it gives you answers with technical things, then you rephrase the question with the actual words that came back. And then you can learn about the words, and you can also then formulate a better question and get a better answer. So the biggest, by the way, I'm a big believer in read more and watch. Like there's actually a philosophy, you should read 10 times more code than you write. And I think in college right now, you actually generally write more code than you read, which I think is a mistake. By the way, this is a list of all of the channels that I subscribe to that you're seeing scroll by. So I watch a lot of YouTube. I don't do much but watch YouTube, believe it or not. I don't watch the comment, but I watch a ton of YouTube. And I put a list of the ones, like, thank goodness everybody's got Fireship. How many know low-level learning? Oh, good. Some good hands up there. Network Chuck. Oh, yeah, good. Dave's Garage, Matt Wolf. The Prime Time. Does anybody follow the Prime Time? He's funny. I've got a couple of his clips in here. Anyway, notice it's still scrolling. These are all the channels I subscribe to. You can actually go to my YouTube and follow the ones that I follow. What's that? All this, this is almost 15 years of watching YouTube. Yeah, and the algorithm knows me well. So there's always, anytime something new posts up, I'm like, oh, wow, a new channel that I like. Yeah. So, yeah, so and you could follow me and look at the things that I like, and hopefully the algorithm will learn. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to block the AI from knowing, or Google's algorithm. I have a buddy that's like, okay, I use all these blockers. I don't want them to know where I'm going. All this stuff. Like, I want the AI to know what I'm interested in. He's like, oh, we've got ad block. I'm like, no, I want to see ads for the things I might want to buy. I don't want to see something for diapers or whatever, crazy thing. I want to see an ad that's targeted me, know me, yeah. So, but I'm happy to share my list actually. It's a long list. You have to be interested in bio. You have to be interested in physics. You got to be interested. So there may be things in there that you're not interested in. But one of the, I've talked about this already. Fail fast, fail cheap is the phrase I like to use. Get dirty hands, which was part of that cult of done, and get fast at slinging mud. So one of the best ways to do that is with Docker. How many people have got Docker on their system? Oh, good, beautiful. More hands than I've had in the last year. How many people do Docker IT? How about this Docker-IT? Yeah, you would know if I said Docker space dash IT interactive terminal to run it yourself. Like making a Docker file is one way that you do continuous improvement and deployment. But what's really powerful is like if I want to, let's do Ubuntu. Oh, Docker run. Oh no, I got to download those. Let's do Debian. I don't know. There we go. I'm in a Debian server right now. Like now I can do a bunch of things. And by the way, when I exit it, it's all gone. Like literally, if I touch Doug, you know, there's Doug on the file system right there. I do exit, I go back in, Doug's gone. Like, what a great way to fail fast and fail cheap, right? Get a Docker container, run your commands, get out of it, it's gone. It's not technically gone. There are ways to learn how to go get it back, because unless you do -rm, if you know, like it's actually, if you do Docker PS -a, like that, those bash commands that I just ran are here, and I can relaunch those containers. They'll go away after I do a garbage collect, or they'll go if I remove them, but those containers are there and you can get back to them. But this is a way like, oh, I always hear developers, well, it works on my machine, right? That's because you have a bunch of dependencies installed. Well, if you start with a broad Debian and you install the things you need, then it'll work on everybody's machine. You can run experiments very, very quickly from a known state. And getting comfortable with -IT is a really good skill to be able to learn in order to be able to run experiments quickly. And here, we'll just do we'll do that Ubuntu. Like if I want Ubuntu, it's not that hard, right? Like think about running and installing Ubuntu and getting it up on a virtual machine and doing all the things to get Ubuntu working. I now have Ubuntu. There I am. It's done. You know, if I want to do a node, if I want to get node up and run, oops, helps if I type node. But here I am running node now. Node, you know, with all the dependencies, everything installed. I don't need to go and install all the dependencies. I now have a node server running. Or if I want Python, you know, I want a Python line interpreter, boom, there it is. And I can actually do different tags, right? So it's an important thing to learn, to be very fast at failing fast and failing cheap. And by the way, most people don't talk about that. This video right here, he talks about that, the command line interface. But when you see most tutorials on Docker, they talk about the Docker file and building the Docker file and how you can make a container and all that. But they don't talk about what you would do with it after you build it and how you can experiment with it. So this is one of the best videos out there for that. Okay.
Welcome to.
All right. So we talked about breadth. Now we'll talk a little bit about depth. You know, like how do you get depth? This is one of my, anybody know roadmap.sh? Oh, good. So there's enough people out here. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but what you can do is come in here, you can click on backend. You can see like all the different things you need to be a backend engineer. If I want to learn blockchain, here are all the topics, and I can click on here and actually go read articles about it. And all of this is in GitHub and Git backed. So this is a way to go deep on a particular topic and focus, on an area of interest. And it's really good. There's a lot of really good resources out there, as you can see back end, and it's phenomenal. Yeah, actually, if I look at that back end one again, you could see it's got like a whole journey of in the order in which you should learn things, like what is HTTP and what is so if I go to HTTP, I can actually see an article on what is HTTP and then see even the HTTP headers and yeah. So it's just a really good thing if you want to start diving deep and you think you know this is a pathway you want to go down. Okay. By the way, I'm a little bit biased because I have a certain philosophy that I think you should learn Linux, and you should learn Linux well. Like 10 years ago, I would probably said no. Most employers want, you know, Microsoft Windows and a Microsoft stack. That's changed, I think, in the last 5 years. Microsoft embraced Linux. Like, I think you should learn Linux. So like, no matter which pathway you go on, especially in computer science, Linux is like, and I love Linux. One of the reasons I've been doing Linux since the original Slackware release back in the 90s. And I loved it because when there was a bug, I could just look at the source code and fix it instead of being on the call with Microsoft. And that forced me all the time to actually, I have contributions to the MySQL kernel. Actually, I fixed the CD-ROM thing back years ago in the Linux kernel and made a pull request for that. So like literally like build your own kernel, I think. I think it's important to like do that, especially if you want to do systems work. And there's some good videos here about the 100 things you need to know about Linux by Fireship and 60 command lines. Learn the command line though. I am stunned at how many students are graduating in a computer science degree and don't know how to string a series of commands together. Like that, there was a big thing of point and click, but scripting and command line is, I tell people all the time, you're wizards. You're wizards, you are magicians, you can do, you know, amazing things, but you have to know the spells and incantations to make it work. And that means you've got to learn the spells and incantations. If you're going to point and click your way, you're not going to be efficient as you can be if you type. And by the way, AI does most of the typing for you. You could put a terminal on there and you could just start typing parts of it. It auto completes and everything else. So I'm a big Vim person. So I also like VI as my editor. But anyway, so learn the man pages. How many people have manned stuff before? Any man page users out there? Yeah. I feel bad, but I think man is still a thing. Even though you could Google it, you should still kind of read the man pages. If you man a command, it'll come up in your terminal and you can read it. And sometimes the man is better than if you Google it because the parameters on your system are different than what you Google, right? So learn the man page system. And by the way, how many people know RTFM? Oh, one. It used to be a rude thing you'd say. RTF means read the effing manual. And so if you asked a question online, the answer would be RTFM. And that was a rude way to do it. But it's like, but actually I use it in my own organization because I tell my developers, I'm sorry, don't build a audible culture. Like your answer should be RTFM. If somebody asks you a question, you give them the answer, you should not do that. You should say, go read the documentation I made. That's the polite way of RTFM, meaning like you should be writing documentation. And then when somebody asks you a question, like go read the documentation. I worked really hard on it and tell me what's wrong with it or how I can improve it. That's something I try to do in my own company. Okay. Automating something. So this is depth. I also a big believer in the JavaScript ecosystem. There's a whole bunch of links here about understanding JavaScript, like learning Node, taking a Code Academy course, the different JavaScript. I love Vite because it lets you experiment with lots and lots of different JavaScript frameworks. And there are CSS frameworks. It's funny how every computer science student that I've had has told me that, you know, why haven't you told me about CSS frameworks? I'm writing raw CSS. Everyone here, I assume, is writing raw CSS in one of their classes. Yeah. Yeah, nobody does that in real life. I mean, we do that for little silly things and you need to know it, right? You absolutely have to know CSS. But like, if you're reinventing the wheel, like there's really good CSS frameworks and a lot of them. That's one of the other problems. There's probably at least 20 frameworks. And I also think you should make your own NPM and understand how to contribute it. Learn AI, right? Learn AI at least. I have some resources here about it. I actually put a video here about learning RAG. Anybody know 3 Blue 1 Brown? Okay, some hands, but 3 Blue 1 Brown is a beautiful.
In the last chapter, you and I started to step in specific directions.
As a quick recap, here's the important context I want you to have in mind. The goal of the model that you and I are studying is to take in a piece of text and predict what word comes next. The input text is broken up into little pieces that we call tokens, and these are very often words or pieces of words. But just to make the examples in this video easier for you and me to think about, let's simplify by pretending that tokens are always just words. The first step in a transformer is to associate each token with a high-dimensional vector, what we call its embedding. Now, the most important idea I want you to have in mind is how directions in this high-dimensional space of all possible embeddings can correspond with semantic meaning. In the last chapter, we saw an example for how direction can correspond to gender, in the sense that adding a certain step in this space can take you from the embedding of a masculine noun to the embedding of the corresponding feminine noun. That's just one example. You could imagine how many other.
The picture you might have in mind is that there are multiple distinct directions in this embedding space, encoding the multiple distinct meanings of the word mole, and that a well-trained attention block calculates what you need to add to the generic embedding to move it to one of these more specific directions. as a function of the context. To take another example, consider the embedding of the word tower. This is presumably some very generic, non-specific direction in the space, associated with lots of other large, tall nouns. If this word was immediately preceded by Eiffel, you could imagine wanting the mechanism to update this vector so that it points in a direction that more specifically encodes the Eiffel Tower, maybe correlated with vectors associated with Paris and France and things made of steel. If it was also preceded by the word miniature, then the vector should be updated even further so that it no longer correlates with large, tall things. More generally than just refining the meaning of a word, the attention block allows the model to move.
He has a whole course and it's all visually done like that. It's so good. And it helps, it literally helps. And that's in this link here. This is his course. This is his AI playlist. And I have my own AI playlist that I've built that actually like breaks it down. That's just transformers, but like convolutional neural networks and things of that nature. So, and you can find beautiful visualizations of these things online. So learning AI, and that had a lot of math in it. Some people like, oh my God, math, whatever. But the simple analogy is like these vectors are sort of like coordinates in your brain. Like literally you have, like they actually, there was a paper written about they found the Britney Spears neuron. And they literally found, like they did an MRI, an fMRI of somebody, and they found like individual neurons that light up when you say the word Britney Spears, or you say Obama, or you do whatever. So they literally are positions in your brain that are harmonized, and if I were to say like impersonator, Britney Spears impersonator, like that area would light up, but somebody else, some other part of my neuron would light up. So these vectors in this multidimensional space are literally just like coordinates in the interconnection of the neurons in your brain. There's a direct correlation between this vector space and the way that the brain builds connections. So that's kind of what AI is doing. So, all right, I am gonna pause here. I have like, actually I did pretty well. I have like, yeah, I have a few more slides, but I kind of prioritize them. Oh, actually, here, we have to play this one. I'm sorry.
Here is the truest thing about life as a programmer, okay? You start off right here. This is Mount Stupid. The reality is that if you don't believe that you are a good programmer, you're never going to scale this mountain. You're never going to take on problems that are probably outside of your skill range. You're never going to attempt to do anything big because you're constantly second guessing yourself. To be able to get into the mountain of being pretty good, you have to go through Mount Stupid. There is no shortcut. You can't just sit there and think, oh, I'm too stupid to do anything, and somehow just walk around this mountain. You gotta make mistake after mistake, because if you don't make a series of really bad decisions and learn from them, you never gain the experience to become a decent programmer. And if you never become a decent programmer, you're never gonna make bigger mistakes to become a great programmer. Learning is just series of making bad decisions and correcting them later on. There is no book, there is nothing that is going to cure you from making mistakes to learn. So climb Mount Stupid, because behind Mount Stupid is becoming a senior engineer.
So climb Mount Stupid. That'll be the end there. If we, by the way, I don't know how we doing on time. We're over, right? If there's any questions, by the way, let me put this up here. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. If you guys hit that with your phones, you can ask questions there. That's a Discord server if you have Discord. Hopefully that works. Is it working up there? Everybody's sitting in the back. You guys are all prototypical developers. You guys are great. You just sat in the front. Everybody else sat up in the back up there. So, but if you've got questions or things, feel free to ask there and I'll answer, but I don't know if we have time for any questions or. Oh, 10 minutes. Okay, good. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Sure. Caleb up there. I gotta say, all hail the mighty algorithm. If you use YouTube and you subscribe to them or you follow people on Twitter, a lot of the creators I follow on Twitter, You know, I actually follow some people on Instagram and things of that nature. So I will say this, I like YouTube a lot more than some of the others because there's also the algorithms can be a little toxic too. And so I don't use Facebook, for example, because it's just, you know, but and Instagram is like, I just do that so I can keep track of what my daughters are doing. I have 4 daughters, and so they live their lives on Instagram. But but actually, I find YouTube is an excellent resource, right? The more things you subscribe to, it learns and tries to show you those things. So, but yeah, like maybe there's also a little bit of discipline in practicing some digital hygiene and not clicking on things that, you know, I honestly, I have done that in the last year, like, oh, that's clickbaity, and that's like somebody like falling down and hurting themselves or whatever type of videos, right? So literally on YouTube, like I pursue some of those on some of the other platforms, like, oh, well, that's funny, I want to watch that. I like actually I'm intentionally on YouTube, like I literally try to keep my my persona like focused on the areas that I'm interested in. So, yep. Yeah, I'm subscribed to him. There's a lot of channels. I don't know the channel. I sometimes talk to people like, oh, I can't think of the channel's name. Like, oh, like I actually did this morning. I couldn't remember Stephen Mold. Stephen Mold is a great a YouTuber that does a really wide variety of geeky things. And so anyway, I literally thought of his name as I drove over here because I couldn't remember it this morning when I was telling somebody else about a video. So thank goodness. All right. Yes, I know it. Yeah. So, well, I think it's, again, so the question is, what things do you prioritize first? I think it depends on what makes you happy, right? So what I would prioritize, I'm reluctant to tell you what I would prioritize versus what you prioritize. Like, for example, if you like user UI, UX, and that's why that, forgot the name of the tool now. See, I'm so bad with names. This developer roadmaps. If you think you like UI, UX, you can follow the UI, UX pathway. Because it has roles. You know, so these are the role based. Like if you like front end, this pathway here of what you like to do for, you know, learning CSS and HTML. And by the way, I think Docker is not in here, and this is a lot. Like if you're front end, you should learn Docker. Like actually, I happen to know this pathway, and I was like, does it have the back end? He'll have Docker in here. Let's see, somewhere in here there'll be Docker. I swear, if there better be. Okay, thank goodness. All right, good. I'm a big believer you should learn Docker no matter what you do. And so I actually thought about one day going in there and putting Docker in here and explaining why you should learn Docker. But I think it's really dependent on the kinds of things that really give you joy. Like some people are wired to want to do user interface. I'm not a UI guy. I know what a good UI looks like. I can't write one to save my soul. Like I can't position the, I mean, look at how I position I have a UI guy, and if you see how I randomly just throw things on the screen here, and yeah, they're just like, throw it there. I care more about making it work and telling the story than how it looks. And there are some people who like have an eye and they can see what things look like, and they have a natural gift of seeing proportions and weights and things of that. That's not me. So like if that's you, I would give you a different pathway. Hopefully that answers your question. So it's a tough question. Yep. Is there another question? Yeah. Well, yeah. So the question is, the advice to my daughter is to manage work-life balance. I don't have work-life balance, so I'm not the good person to talk to about that. I own a company. I started a company when I was 23 years old, and I worked ridiculously long hours. And even to the detriment of my wife and kids. You know, my kids are all grown and they're graduated, and I'm an empty nester. And now I get to actually have guilt-free workaholism, except for my poor wife. So work-life balance is a tough thing for me. That's one of the reasons also I feel like, by the way, with my employees though, what I will say this, I say to my employees, please, please, please unplug on the weekends. Like we try to protect the weekends. There's poor people who are on call. We have a rotation process. And I don't want people to get burned out. Like there is a burnout process. So we have a flex time. We try to let people work where they can. But there are some people I can't tear away from the terminal. And I'm like, dude, it's like, you know, you've put 36 hours in, let's like go to bed, dude. And I'm like, yeah, but you're still going with me. I'm like, yeah, I own the company. You're just getting a paycheck, you know? So, yeah, so I will say like, don't, you know, one of the things, problems with passion projects is you can actually, you know, get so invested in it and not leave time for yourself or your family or others. And I will say this, that, and thank you for the question, because I think this is a good way to say it. The most important things when you pass and you're on your deathbed, as I'm told by my father who passed away last year, is family, you know, and the people you love. And don't ignore that. Like I tell people, like, if a third of your life is work, don't ignore the other third of your life is the family and the people you love. So like definitely protect that as well. So thank you for that question, because that's important too. Yep. Was there a question? I think the problem is that, we'll use Mark Twain's quote, which most men live in quiet desperation. Most people are working jobs they hate. So work-life balance is really important. So you know, like, and if you work for a manager, one of my things is like, find work that is a passion of yours so that you're less worried about balance, and also work for people who also have a passion that you can, and if you don't have that, then work-life balance, like whatever you can get, right? Like if work is really, in French, work is a bad word. In the United States, work doesn't have the, we talk about the vectors in our brains, right? You know, the word work in French harmonizes with evil and bad and like things you suffer till you get to retire at the age of, I think, 50 or something like this. So you work to live in French. Here we live to work. There's a cultural thing here in the United States about that. So this is a tough area for me because I don't have the balance that it's a very difficult thing for me to opine on. Would you have a comment? Yeah. Oh, I have slides on that too, that talking about using LinkedIn. I highly believe that one of the things you should be doing, I think GitHub and LinkedIn are your two best assets. Like one of the things I do when I look at an employee is I go and I see if they have posts. This is, by the way, Dear Diary. So I'm here I am 6 weeks in the womb and I'm bored silly. I mean, there's not much to do in here. Like, I think a lot of people are reluctant to put posts out. I actually like to see people putting posts out and describing what they, what they learned, right? Like if you're gonna do institutional knowledge, like as a new graduate, like, hey, this is a thing I just watched, I thought I would share it, right? And you might have people who follow you. So you can do Substacks. You could do your own Substack if you want. You could have your own blog. LinkedIn will get you a little bit more visibility. It'll bring people to you. But like, I feel like LinkedIn is one of the best places to go because if you build a blog, there's nothing driving traffic. Nothing driving traffic to your blog, right? But if you do LinkedIn, and it is one of the things I like to see. If I see somebody who's documented what they're doing, putting stuff out there, I am more likely to hire that person than somebody that's a blank slate. I have no idea about this person. So now, by the way, this is a double-edged sword. If you rant online and you talk about crazy things, that's also like, be careful. Like if you don't trust your mouth, if your mouth gets you in trouble, maybe not blog so much. Or learn a skill to make sure you put that in check, because that will eventually bite you, in your work anyway. I have developers who work for me where I'm like, I said I didn't want to know. I always said to people, I don't want yes men working for me. But I had one developer I had to say, I didn't want no men either. I don't want a negative Nelly. That's just like everything is a no. It's and by the way, there are certain roles where I do want those people. Like you want auditors and you want accountants to be very pessimistic people. So like in an organization, you got to find those people and put them in those roles and make sure they challenge the ones who are the yes, who are more of the go-getters. So it takes all kinds, but just know, like, be careful what that persona is, and build a persona that actually accurately represents yourself to a potential employer looking at it. So. All right. Any other questions? If not, we'll share this video, these slides with you. Maybe I'll play this last video just for Drew.
Our mission statement here for our internship is we seek to cultivate driven, self-motivated part of cult. Make sure it is the cult of done.
Drew's my assistant. He grew up so fast, and I couldn't have said it better. Actually, he was right. So, thank you very much for joining.